She walked into my office like she owned the place, my husband's mistress, but she wasn't there to gloat or apologize. She slid a folder across my desk and said 5 words that changed everything. He's doing it to me too. What we uncovered next destroyed him. What I'm about to tell you sounds like fiction, but every word is true. Before I show you how the wife and the mistress took down the man who betrayed us both, smash that subscribe button because this story has twists you won't believe. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Rochelle, and for 9 years I wore the title of Mrs. Trevor Hamilton like it was a crown. I was 36, a college professor teaching African American literature at a state university, and my husband was one of the most successful criminal defense attorneys in our city. When we walked into rooms together, people noticed. Trevor had that kind of presence, 6'2", always in tailored suits, smile that could convince a jury of anything. And for a long time, I believed I was the luckiest woman alive. Our house was beautiful. Not mansion level, but that kind of elegant 2-story colonial that says, "We've made it," without screaming it. We had the right friends, went to the right events, took photos that made people double tap on Instagram. From the outside, we were perfect. But if you looked closer, if you actually lived inside that picture frame, you'd see the cracks that had been spreading for 3 years. Trevor stopped touching me somewhere around year 6. Not all at once, but gradually, like a sunset you don't notice until suddenly it's dark. First, it was the goodnight kisses that became pecks on the forehead, then the date nights that got canceled for work emergencies, then the sex that went from passionate to obligatory to maybe once every 2 or 3 months if I initiated it. And every time I brought it up, every single time I said, "Trevor, I feel like we're roommates, not married," he'd look at me with this patient, almost pitying expression and say I was being too sensitive, that I didn't understand the pressure he was under, that maybe I needed to focus on my own career instead of obsessing over our relationship. So I did what a lot of women do. I convinced myself I was overreacting. I threw myself into my work, published 2 academic papers, mentored more students. I told myself that marriage ebbs and flows, that we were just in a rough patch. I ignored the phone calls he took in other rooms. I didn't question why he needed to work until 2 in the morning 3 times a week. I played the role of the understanding wife because the alternative was admitting that my marriage was dying and I had no idea how to save it. My 36th birthday was on a Tuesday in October. I didn't expect anything extravagant, but I thought he'd remember. I came home from teaching that evening to an empty house, made myself dinner, waited. He came through the door at 2:15 in the morning, and when I asked where he'd been, he looked genuinely confused. "Working on the Morrison case, babe. You know how important this is." He'd forgotten. Completely forgotten. I cried myself to sleep in our guest bedroom, and the next morning, there was a Cartier bracelet on the kitchen counter with a note that said, "Sorry, things have been crazy. Love you." The bracelet cost $3,000. He couldn't remember my birthday, but he could buy my silence. That's when I knew. Deep in my gut, in that place where women always know but sometimes refuse to listen, I knew Trevor was having an affair. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday afternoon during my office hours, there was a knock on my door. I called out, "Come in," expecting a student, and instead, this woman walked in. She was stunning, I'll give her that. About 30 or 31, wearing this burgundy pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly car payment, natural hair and a perfect twist out, carrying herself with the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. She closed the door behind her, and my heart started racing because somehow, without her saying a word, I already knew. "Professor Rochelle?" she said, her voice smooth and educated. "I'm Whitney. We need to talk about Trevor." I should have thrown her out. I should have screamed or cried or done literally anything except what I actually did, which was gesture to the chair across from my desk and say, "Sit down." Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was relief that the truth was finally coming for me instead of me having to chase it. But I sat there, gripping the edge of my desk, and waited. Whitney didn't waste time. She told me she was an interior designer, that she'd met Trevor 2 years ago at a charity gala I hadn't attended because I'd had the flu. She told me they'd been together ever since, not sneaking around for quick hotel hookups, but actually together. Dinner dates, weekend trips to wine country. He'd integrated her into his life, introduced her to his work friends, people I'd never met. She genuinely believed she was his girlfriend, his only girlfriend. He told me you two were separated, she said, watching my face. That you were basically divorced, just hadn't filed the papers yet. That you'd grown apart and were living separate lives. She paused. Last week I found your wedding photo in his glove compartment. 5x7, professional shot, you in a white dress looking at him like he hung the moon. That's when I knew he'd been lying. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up. 2 years. He'd been with her for 2 years, building a whole separate relationship while coming home to me and making me feel crazy for noticing his distance. But Whitney wasn't done. She reached into her bag and pulled out a manila folder, slid it across my desk. I hired a private investigator, she said, because finding out about you was bad enough, but I had a feeling there was more. And there is, Rochelle. So much more. I opened that folder with shaking hands, and what I saw made my stomach drop. Bank statements, photos of Trevor meeting with men I didn't recognize in parking garages, spreadsheets tracking money movements, documents with my signature on them that I'd never signed. Whitney started explaining, and with every word, my world collapsed a little more. Trevor had been stealing from his clients, settlement funds, trust accounts, money that was supposed to go to people who'd been hurt, who'd trusted him to protect them. He'd been skimming for 4 years, small amounts at first, then bigger and bigger chunks, over $600,000 total. And where was it going? Gambling. Sports betting that started as a hobby and became an addiction. Underground poker games where he was losing tens of thousands in a single night. He owed $340,000 to a loan shark named Big Curtis, and those photos Whitney's investigator took? Those were Trevor meeting with Curtis's men, probably begging for more time. There's more, Whitney said, and I wanted to laugh because what could possibly be worse than finding out your husband is a criminal? He's planning to run. He has accounts set up in the Cayman Islands. He's been liquidating assets, including refinancing your house. That signature right there? She pointed to a document. That's not yours, is it? It wasn't. It was close enough that a bank might not catch it, but I'd never signed that paper. Trevor had forged my signature to refinance our house, and the money was gone. All of it. And my inheritance, the $70,000 my grandmother left me that was supposed to be untouchable in a separate account? I pulled it up on my laptop right there in my office, and my hands were shaking so hard I could barely type. $89,000. Gone. Just gone. I looked at Whitney, this woman who should have been my enemy, and asked the only question that mattered. Why are you telling me this? She met my eyes, and for the first time I saw past the perfect makeup and designer suit to the pain underneath. Because he did it to me too. I gave him $60,000 for what he called a business investment. The money's gone. And he's been asking me for more, getting angry when I hesitate. I realized a few days ago that we're not women he loved or even women he wanted. We're marks. Both of us. You're the wife with the inheritance and the house he can steal. I'm the girlfriend with savings and no legal protection. He's using us both to fund his escape plan, and when he runs, we'll be left with nothing. We sat in my office for 3 hours that day. Whitney showed me everything her investigator had found. Text messages between Trevor and 3 other women, each one thinking she was special, each one having given him money. One of them, a nurse named Christine, had lost $45,000, her entire retirement savings. He'd promised to invest it, said he'd double it in 6 months. She'd been calling him for weeks, and he'd blocked her number. I contributed what I knew, his patterns, his passwords, where he kept his files at home, the name of his accountant, the trips he'd taken that he'd said were for work conferences. Whitney took notes like she was preparing for trial, and I guess in a way, we both were. This is insane, I finally said as the sun was setting outside my office window. I'm sitting here strategizing with my husband's mistress. Whitney looked at me, and there wasn't any apology in her eyes, but there was understanding. Would you rather do it alone? Because he's counting on us hating each other. He's counting on you being too proud to talk to me and me being too ashamed to face you. That's how men like Trevor win. They keep us separated, fighting each other, while they walk away clean. She was right. God help me, the woman my husband had been sleeping with for 2 years was absolutely right. We couldn't go to the police yet. Trevor was a criminal defense attorney. He knew every loophole, every technicality. We needed irrefutable evidence, the kind that couldn't be explained away or dismissed. Whitney knew a forensic accountant, someone who owed her a favor. I had access to Trevor's home office, his laptop, his personal files. Between the two of us, we had what we needed to build a case. The next 2 weeks were the strangest of my life. I went home every night and played the dutiful wife, cooked dinner, asked about his day, smiled when he kissed my forehead and went to his office to work. And then, when he fell asleep, I copied files from his laptop onto flash drives. I photographed documents. I recorded conversations where he lied straight to my face. During the day, I met Whitney in coffee shops 2 towns over, in parking lots, once in the bathroom of a Target, because we were that paranoid about being seen together. The forensic accountant confirmed everything. Client trust fund violations dating back 4 years, fake invoices, altered court documents. Trevor had embezzled over $600,000, and the trail was clear as day once you knew where to look. We found evidence of the gambling debts, tracked payments to Big Curtis's operation. We found emails to the Cayman Islands Bank. We found the plan, laid out in Trevor's own words in a draft email he'd never sent, about disappearing in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. We had 3 weeks before he vanished and left us both destroyed. Whitney also found the other women, 5 in total, including her. Each one had given Trevor money, anywhere from $10,000 to Christine's $45,000. Each one thought she was special. Each one had been lied to, used, and discarded when she had nothing left to give. We contacted 3 of them, carefully, and they agreed to help. They wanted justice, too. But Trevor was getting suspicious. He noticed I was different, and one night at dinner, he put down his fork and looked at me with those sharp lawyer eyes. "You're being weird, Rochelle. What's going on with you?" I'd practiced this lie with Whitney. "Tenure review is coming up," I said, letting my voice shake just a little. "I'm stressed about the committee decision. You know how political the department can be." He believed me because it fit his narrative of me as the anxious, neurotic wife. He patted my hand and told me I'd be fine, that I worried too much. Then he went to his office, and I heard him on the phone, voice low and urgent. When I pressed my ear to the door, I caught fragments. 2 weeks. Have it ready. Can't wait any longer. I texted Whitney from the bathroom. He's moving up the timeline. We have 2 weeks, maybe less. Her response came immediately. Then we finish this now. I'll contact the FBI tomorrow. The FBI. We were really doing this. I was about to turn in my own husband to federal agents, working alongside the woman he'd been cheating with. It felt surreal. It felt terrifying. It felt absolutely necessary. Whitney set the trap. She called Trevor, told him she'd come into an unexpected inheritance, $100,000, and she wanted to invest it all with him. She played it perfectly, desperate and trusting, and a little bit needy. He took the bait so fast it would have been funny if it wasn't so sick. They set a meeting for Friday at an upscale restaurant downtown, private room in the back. He'd bring the partnership papers, she'd bring the money, and they'd celebrate their future together. Except the money was marked by the FBI. We'd given them everything: documents, recordings, testimony from the other women. They were building cases for embezzlement, fraud, forgery, wire fraud, and about 6 other charges I couldn't keep straight. The meeting with Whitney was the final piece, catching Trevor in the act of accepting what he believed was another victim's money. And I was going to be there. Not hiding, not watching from a distance. Whitney and I had planned it down to the minute. She'd be there first. Trevor would arrive, they'd talk, and then I'd walk in. The night before, I barely slept. Trevor was next to me in our bed, snoring softly, completely unaware that his entire world was about to detonate. I thought about the girl I'd been 9 years ago, standing at an altar in a white dress, promising forever to this man. I thought about all the times I'd made excuses for him, convinced myself I was being unreasonable, swallowed my doubts because I wanted so badly to believe in us. And I thought about Whitney, about Christine, about all the women Trevor had used like we were ATMs with heartbeats. My phone buzzed with a text from Whitney. "You strong enough for tomorrow?" I typed back. "I have to be." Friday came. I taught my morning class on autopilot, barely heard my own lecture. At 3 o'clock, I drove to the restaurant. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I parked 2 blocks away, walked to the back entrance like Whitney and I had planned. The FBI agents were already there, dressed as restaurant staff. One of them, a black woman about my age named Agent Peters, squeezed my shoulder. "You're doing the right thing," she said. I waited in the kitchen, watching through the small window as Trevor arrived at 3:30. He was wearing his best suit, the navy one I'd bought him for our anniversary. He looked happy, confident, already counting Whitney's money in his mind. Whitney was sitting at the table, and when he kissed her cheek, I felt nothing. No jealousy, no anger, just cold determination. They talked for 10 minutes. Whitney played her part beautifully, laughing at his jokes, touching his hand across the table. He showed her papers, probably fake investment documents. She reached for her purse, supposedly to get the envelope of money. That's when I walked in. Trevor's face went through about 5 emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, recognition, shock, panic, and then this desperate attempt to smile like he could charm his way out of this, too. "Rochelle? Baby, what are you doing here? This is just a client meeting." "Stop." Whitney's voice cut through his lies like a knife. "Don't say another word. We know everything, Trevor." The FBI agents stepped out from their positions. Agent Peters identified herself, and I watched Trevor's face drain of color. He tried to stand, actually looked like he might run, but 2 agents were blocking the exits. "Trevor Hamilton," Agent Peters said, "you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, money laundering, and forgery. You have the right to remain silent." He started yelling then, not at the agents, at me. "You did this. You destroyed our marriage. You ruined my life. After everything I gave you." His voice was getting higher, more desperate. "Rochelle, please, you don't understand. I can explain all of this." I walked closer to him, close enough that he could see my face clearly. "No, Trevor," I said, and my voice was steady. "You did this to yourself. Every choice, every lie, every person you hurt. That was you. I'm just making sure you face the consequences." The agents put him in handcuffs. He was still yelling as they led him toward the back exit, threatening lawyers, threatening lawsuits, threatening everything except accepting responsibility. Whitney stood up from the table and walked over to stand next to me. We watched them take him away together. "You thought we'd tear each other apart while you disappeared," Whitney said, just loud enough for Trevor to hear. "You underestimated both of us." The door closed behind him, and suddenly it was quiet. Whitney and I stood there, not quite looking at each other, processing what had just happened. Agent Peters came over with paperwork we needed to sign, explained what would happen next. Trevor would be arraigned Monday. The evidence was overwhelming. He was looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison. The next few months were chaos. Trevor's arrest made the news. Local attorney embezzles from clients, facing decades in prison. His firm dropped him immediately. The state bar started disbarment proceedings. His family, who'd always treated me like I wasn't quite good enough for their golden boy, called to apologize. His mother actually cried on the phone, said she'd had no idea, asked if I needed anything. The divorce was fast. Trevor had no leverage, no moral high ground, no room to negotiate. I got the house, what was left of our savings, and my inheritance money back through the restitution process. Whitney recovered her $60,000. Christine and the other women got settlements. The clients Trevor had stolen from received compensation through a victims fund. And somewhere in the middle of all that legal chaos, Whitney and I became friends. Real friends. Not just allies in taking down a common enemy, but actual people who cared about each other. She helped me move into a new apartment because I couldn't stay in that house anymore. I helped her paint her home office. We met for brunch on Sundays, and yes, people stared, people whispered, the wife and the mistress sitting together, laughing together. Some folks thought it was beautiful. Others thought we'd both lost our minds. I didn't care. Whitney had walked into my office when she could have just disappeared. She could have taken her $60,000 loss and moved on with her life. Instead, she knocked on my door and said, "He's doing it to me too." She chose truth over comfort, alliance over pride. And because of that choice, because of her courage, we both got free. Trevor's in prison now. 15 years, eligible for parole in 10 if he behaves. Sometimes I think about the girl I was, the one who believed in fairy tales and forever. She died somewhere between the forgotten birthday and the forged signature. The woman I am now is harder, smarter, less willing to ignore her instincts, and she knows that sometimes the person you think is your enemy is actually the only one brave enough to tell you the truth. People say I should hate Whitney, but she's the reason I'm not broke and blind right now. She could have just walked away when she found out about me. Instead, she knocked on my door and said, "We deserve better." And you know what? We did. We do. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to this channel right now. I share real stories about betrayal, survival, and coming out stronger. Hit that like button and comment below. Team Rochelle and Whitney or nah? Next video drops Friday, and trust me, you'll want to see it. Until then, remember, never underestimate a woman who's done playing games.